Hi there, and welcome to the Mindful Marathon podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk, a run coach and pediatrician. Mindful Marathon is all about helping runners of all types to run their own race. Whether you are a seasoned runner or you're just getting started, I want to let you know that you're welcome here and that you're in the right place. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindful Marathon podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Quirk. I am super pumped to be in your ears today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're having a great week so far. Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to my friends Jen and Allie. I got a couple of notes of feedback about the podcast. Jen said, "Michelle, did I tell you I loved your last podcast about what to do during off season?" And Allie wrote, "Agreed, it was exactly what I needed." So thank you, ladies, for listening and for sending notes of feedback. And if you are out there listening and you have notes of feedback for me or topics that you'd like me to cover, please send them my way. I am all ears. My contact info is in the show notes. So today's episode is going to be really fun, and it's on a topic that a lot of runners are thinking about right now, which is it time to start training for your fall race? So you might not be thinking about the fall, or you might, but whether you're signed up for a fall race or you're just thinking about it, this episode is going to help you figure out what to do right now in this late spring, early summer period. And the spoiler alert is that it probably is time to start training for your fall half or full marathon. And then we'll also talk about base training and why this phase matters, as well as what your training timeline should look like as we go through the summer and then get into more of a structured plan leading into your race for the fall. Now, before we dive into training dates and training strategy, what to do right now with base training, I wanted to share a short excerpt that is adapted from The Road to Sparta by Dean Karnassus. He also has a lovely piece on Medium called Ode to Marathon, which I highly suggest you look up and read. His words are really, really beautiful. I think this will set the scene nicely, especially if you have a fall marathon on your schedule. So, if you'll allow me, I'm going to read this passage. There is no luck involved in finishing the marathon. The ingredients required to tackle this formidable challenge are straightforward: commitment, sacrifice, grit, and tenacity. Plain and simple. Poised courageously at the starting line, nervously awaiting the start, you wonder what the day will hold in store. There is no lying to yourself here. The marathon sees right through excuses, shortcuts, and self-transgressions. The marathon doesn't just build character, it reveals it. At mile 20, you listen only to the passion within your heart, and this burning desire tells you to keep moving forward, to continue putting one foot in front of the other to the best of your ability. Courage comes in many forms. Today, you will have the courage to keep trying and to not give up, regardless of how dire things become. As they carry you away from the finish line, wrapped in a flimsy mylar blanket, struggling to keep your head upright, you are at peace. You have done what few will ever do. You have done what you thought you could never do. And it's the most glorious, unforgettable awakening ever. You are a marathoner. The gift is yours eternally. I love that passage, and I love how it reminds us that running isn't just about numbers and paces and race dates. And I think this is the kind of energy that we want to bring into this season of base training as we prepare for the fall. And I thought that was a lovely way to lead into all of this. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you. So now let's talk about timing in terms of when to start preparing for a half and a full marathon. So we're going to break this down. For a half marathon, most people will follow a 12-week training plan. But before that, we want a solid period of base building to give the body time to adjust. And I would say that is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks prior to getting into structured training for a half marathon, but it could be more depending on where you're starting from. Now, for a full marathon, you're looking at 16 to 20 weeks of structured training with 6 to 8 weeks of base training beforehand. And again, maybe more depending on where you're starting from. So, we'll talk about base training in a minute. Now, let's look at some of the popular fall races so that we can work backward and plan. There are three world major marathons in the fall, namely Berlin, Chicago, and New York. So the date of the Berlin Marathon is September 21st, and using a 16-week start, that training plan would begin June 1st. Then we have Chicago, which is October 12th, and for a 16-week start, that would begin June 22nd. And then we have the New York City Marathon, November 2nd, and for a 16-week start, that would be July 13th. I also want to include here for my local runners the Philly Half and Full Marathon Weekend, which is happening November 22nd and 23rd. And for those wanting to do a 12-week plan for the half marathon or a 16-week plan for the marathon, your training would start in late July or early August. And then last, I wanted to include Disney's Wine and Dine Half Marathon weekend. The half marathon takes place the same date as the New York City Marathon, which is November 2nd. And so if you count backwards 12 weeks, that would look like training in early August. So those were the ones I have. There are plenty of other fall half marathons and full marathons, and you can simply look up the date and count backwards and figure out when to start your training. Now, why should we start now? Why should we include a period of base building into training? I think that a lot of us tend to think training only counts when the official training plan starts for the race. But I would say that base building is the quiet hero of any successful race season. And I want you to think about base training like we are priming a canvas. So we are preparing the body and the mind so that when our structured training begins, we're ready to handle it. Skipping a base building phase is sort of like trying to build a house without a foundation. So you might be able to get by for a while, but as Dean Karnazes said, and in the excerpt that I read, there are no shortcuts, and the marathon sees right through any shortcuts that you take. So we want to have a nice, strong base building period so that we don't run into trouble later. So, base building is really the time to focus on consistency, your easy effort runs, and building your aerobic endurance, your aerobic base without the pressure of long mileage or speed work or any of those things. And I think it also gives us a time to run without so many expectations and to really reconnect with your why and develop habits that really support your training in the long term. So, if you're wondering if you're ready to jump into a training plan, I want you to ask yourself these three questions. Am I running regularly at least 3 times a week? Am I injury free and feeling motivated? And do I have the mental space in my schedule to commit to regular runs, recovery, and a long run on the weekend? I think those are really the main things. So you kind of know if you have built a good base before you enter into a structured training plan for a half marathon or a full marathon. And I want to throw this out there and say if you're not quite there yet, it's really okay. No worries. That's why we have this period of base training. And that's why I wanted to do this episode now ahead of the time when these structured plans really start up for the fall races, because you can still get where you need to be by starting right now. Start with short, consistent, gentle, easy runs right now, and it will put you in a great spot when those structured plans begin. Now, the last thing I wanted to share in this episode are some mindfulness tips for the base building period. So, I always encourage my runners to begin a training season by setting an intention. And I would encourage you to pick something that is not just a time goal. Time goals are wonderful, and setting PRs is a wonderful thing. But think about an intention that is not related to a time goal. It could be something as simple as I want to enjoy my runs more, or I want to feel strong and balanced this season. So, picking an intention can really shape how you show up for your training cycle. And I would encourage you to write this down. So, if you're in a place where you can do that, pause the podcast and write down the intention. If you're driving, please don't do that. Pick up your pen and paper when you get to your destination or stick it in your phone. But I love intention setting. The second tip I have is to be patient. So the early weeks of base training can feel kind of boring, I'm going to be honest. They can feel a little bit slow and uneventful, and that is honestly the point. That's a good thing. Base training is not as interesting or sexy as speed work and intervals and hill repeats and running on the track and doing your long run and hitting your marathon paces. But base building is what gives you the stamina and the strength to do those more interesting workouts later on. And there are ways we can make base building a little more interesting, but I just want to encourage you to be patient. This period is rather short when we think about the whole training season. The base building period is a short period of time leading up to the structured training, so things will get more interesting, I promise. And to keep things interesting in this moment, I want you to practice using mantras. So you may have heard me talk about this before, usually in the setting of using them in races or using them during runs that are especially challenging, or obstacles that you're facing. But this is a great time to practice them and to come up with which ones you like and which ones work for you. So my friend Jen has one I'm going to share, which is strong legs, strong heart, strong mind. And I really love that. Or you can use something similar like strong body, calm mind, or each step is progress, or run the mile you're in, or run your own race. There are lots and lots of mantras you can use to help you stay centered on your runs, but the base building period is a great time to practice these and to get your mind and body used to hearing them so that you can bring them up later. And most importantly, my last tip here is to be kind to yourself. This is a journey and a long journey at that, and it is not a sprint. And I'm hopeful that you'll go back and listen to that passage that I read at the beginning from Dean Karnassus because I return to that often. I really love it. It's very inspiring, and I love that sentence, courage comes in many forms. So base building, like I said, it can be a little bit of a slow period of time, but the structured training and the harder training is coming. And so now is a great time to sit with your calendar and pencil in, go backwards from the date of your race and figure out when the structured training begins, and then add in a nice period of base building. So, to wrap this up, the bottom line is yes, it is time to start thinking about your fall race. And if you haven't started training yet, now is the perfect time to ease in. I don't want you to wait until the structured training for your fall half marathon or full marathon sets in to really get serious. I want you to build your base now so that you can set yourself up for success when the structured training begins. Now, if you're not sure how to begin, I'd love to help with your training and preparation for your fall race. So, there's a couple of resources I'd like to mention. The first is a free workshop that you can download, which is all about half marathon preparation. So, it's all of my best tips for preparing for a half marathon, and you can find that in the show notes or download it from my website. And then the other thing I want to mention is that I am offering one-on-one strategy sessions. So if you're looking for support, but maybe you're not exactly looking for a customized training plan and the long-term commitment of doing one-on-one coaching, I'm offering one-time strategy sessions with athletes and we'll take a deep dive into your biggest running questions and your goals. And you'll walk away with personalized, actionable guidance that you can use right away. So, the information for how to schedule one of those strategy sessions is also in the show notes and on the website. And I look forward to chatting with you. Thank you again for joining me today. If this episode helped you feel more confident about your fall race preparation, I'd be grateful if you shared it with a running buddy and left a review. Thanks again for listening and see you next time. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a friend. And if you have a moment, please rate and review the podcast so that we can reach and encourage others to tie on their sneakers and join us out there on a run. See you next time.